Kidnap and murder of Cindy Warner out of a home in Granite Bay.
A break in a case that's been unsolved for more than 3 decades. Placer County investigators say they've arrested 64-year-old James Lawhead Jr. for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Cindy Warner.
Arguably, this is one of the most heinous, notorious cold cases we have here in Placer County.
Investigators say back in November of 1991, Warner was taken from her home, leaving her 11-month-old child alone.
Her remains were found approximately 3 weeks later in the Forest Hill area, where pathologists at the time feel like she was kept alive for some time after she went missing.
Now, decades later, investigators say advances in DNA and facial recognition technology helped them identify a suspect.
Detectives from the Placer County Sheriff's Office, members of the cold case investigation team with the assistance of the Bullhead City Police Department in Arizona, arrested the monster responsible for this crime.
Lawhead was arrested in Bullhead City, Arizona, where he remains in custody. Authorities say he has a lengthy history of violent crimes, including serving more than a decade in prison before Warner's murder.
He broke into a home and beat a 71-year-old grandmother nearly to death, stating he thought he killed her. He then subsequently raped and sodomized the 11-year-old granddaughter.
Lawhead's sister, 71-year-old Terry Lawhead, was also arrested, accused of being an accessory.
This was an enormous case that devastated a family and shook a community.
Prosecutors have now filed murder and kidnapping charges.
Our office has charged Mr. Lawhead with 1 count of murder and 2 special circumstances, one for murder a rape during the commission of a murder and a kidnap during the commission of that murder, as well as an independent count of kidnapping.
Investigators say this arrest comes after years of work and help from agencies across the country, finally bringing answers in a case that haunted this community for decades. In Placer County, covering local news that matters, Cedric Hood, Fox 40 News.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon so we can share this major breakthrough in a 34-year-old cold case. We're here to discuss the 1991 kidnap and murder of Cindy Warner out of a home in Granite Bay. Arguably, this is one of the most heinous, notorious cold cases we have here in Placer County. As Elise mentioned, it occurred on November 25th, 1991. She disappeared from the home. Hours later, her 11-month-old was found still strapped to a high chair, crying. Her remains were found approximately 3 weeks later in the Forest Hill area, where pathologists at the time feel like she was kept alive for some time after she went missing. She hadn't been dead and left in the Forest Hill area for 3 weeks. Now, I'm pleased to report that last Friday, detectives from the Placer County Sheriff's Office, members of the cold case investigation team with the assistance of the Bullhead City Police Department in Arizona, arrested the monster responsible for this crime. And he's identified as 64-year-old James Lawhead Jr. Now, we hope that this arrest will help bring some justice and closure to Cindy Warner's family. But as I'm going to talk about the case and the circumstances about the case, we actually have been looking for Mr. Lawhead for quite some time. And we were just preparing to ask for the public's help. We created a video that was going to go out this week to ask for the public's help in helping us find Mr. Lawhead before we got this lead and arrested him on Friday. So I think it would be best if we showed the video now, and it could kind of tell the story about Cindy Warner's case and how this case has transpired, and then I'll add to it after the video.
Cindy Warner was a married woman with 2 young children. She was kidnapped in the middle of the day in November of 1991. She just disappeared from the face of the earth. She was found strangled to death and found in a very remote area.
Granite Bay is the kind of place where some still leave doors and blinds open.
Just something that didn't happen in Granite Bay. It was shocking.
After more than 3 decades, we believe we know who is responsible for the murder of Cindy Warner.
Cindy Warner had gone to her sister's house to clean her house and took her 11-month-old child with her. Around lunchtime, she had put her child in a high chair at a kitchen table. Cynthia's husband arrived at the house with their 4-year-old daughter and found the 11-month-old.
The baby was still here in the same seat, still crying with the Cheerios.
Cindy Water, devoted mother of 2, has disappeared without a trace.
Leaving her shoes, her coat, and her car at the scene.
The search pattern has fanned out in all directions from this Granite Bay command post. So far, they haven't found a thing.
She was found 3 weeks later, 300 feet off the roadway in a wooded area.
Investigators say the killer made no attempt to hide the body. Up to now, no tracks or clues have been found.
Police hope samples taken from the body will show them something.
Over the years, a huge amount of work was done on this case.
We had submitted numerous items and just kept getting blanks. And it was actually the last item we had submitted. Thankfully, due to the new technology, Contra Costa's forensic lab was finally able to get us a hit.
We've identified this individual as James Lawhead Jr. He was a sex offender, spent some time in prison for some sex crimes.
In 1980, he broke into the home of a grandmother and beat her unconscious and sexually assaulted a young child.
Was sentenced to 19 years in prison, was released after 11 years. This crime was committed 10 months after he was released. In 2005, he was arrested for a weapons charge, told an acquaintance that he believed he was going to go back to prison for the rest of his life and that he was going to disappear. And shortly after that, completely disappeared.
This man has been on the run for a long time. He has obviously taken great steps to avoid responsibility, to get away with the crimes he's committed. Cindy Warner and her family deserve answers. They've waited for 30-something years. And now it's time to bring this individual to justice and to hold him account for what he did to his family.
So, coming off of that video, I think gives you guys a good picture of this case. But as I stand here as the Placer County Sheriff, I couldn't be more proud of the hard work of the men and women off to my right, and never giving up on this case and continuing to leverage the emerging DNA technology as things evolve and solving this case. You know, as the video mentioned, once we identified James Lawhead as the suspect, it appeared that he just disappeared since 2005. And we explored all possibilities on what could have happened, whether he was still living under a fake identity, whether he had left the country, or whether he was even deceased. And we checked records throughout the United States and Canada. But late last week, really an unsung hero in this case, there's many, is an analyst from the Scottsdale, Arizona Police Department. Our detectives reached out to other jurisdictions in other states who have permission to leverage facial recognition technology, and this analyst used the Department of Transportation database in Arizona and got a match on a photo of James Lawhead. And we quickly responded to the area with the Bullhead City Police Department and arrested him that same day. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about James Lawhead's past, covered a little bit of it in the video, but that 1980 case where he was convicted is one of the most heinous crimes you'll read about. He broke into a home and beat a 71-year-old grandmother nearly to death, stating he thought he killed her. He then subsequently raped and sodomized the 11-year-old granddaughter. All that being said, he only served 11 years. And when he was sentenced, psychiatrists from the state classified him as a mentally disordered sex offender who was not amenable to treatment. Yet he was still released after 11 years and kidnapped and murdered Cindy Warner within a year of his release. Now in 2002, he was in the area. He did have other contacts with law enforcement. He failed to register as a sex offender in Placer County, and he was arrested. His mugshot is over there off to my left. And then he had an outstanding weapons charge arrest from the city of Lincoln in 2005. And that is when we believe he assumed the identity of Vincent Reynolds, and he disappeared. Now, when he was arrested, we arrested him at the driveway of his home in Bullhead, Arizona. He did not resist. He has since been booked into the county jail in Mojave County in Arizona, where he's being held on charges of kidnapping, murder, and being a wanted sex offender. Our detectives flew out there immediately upon his arrest and served a search warrant, seizing numerous items of evidence from the home, including multiple loaded firearms staged throughout the house and a bag that had his clothes, $15,000 in cash, and a burner phone. Now, he will be brought back to Placer County to be held accountable for his crimes. And then also arrested in this incident is his sister, whose booking photo is down there on the far left, Terry Lawhead. She's 71-year-old Terry Lawhead, who resides in San Clemente, California. She was arrested for accessory, and we arrested her on Saturday the 25th in Lancaster County, South Carolina. Now, Terry was contacted numerous times over the last 20 years, including by the Placer County Sheriff's Office in search for her brother. The last contact we had with her was in March, where we explained to her exactly what her brother was wanted for and explained to her the circumstances in Cindy Warner's case. She still denied any knowledge, said she hadn't seen or heard from her brother in over 20 years and that he may have possibly been dead. When in fact, investigators later found out the home that Mr. Lawhead had been residing in Arizona was owned by his sister Terry, and they had been in some communication, and she was aiding his escape. So with that, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my partner, who also has an investigator on our cold case investigation team, to talk a little bit about the prosecution moving forward, and that's Placer County District Attorney Morgan Geyer.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Morgan Geyer, the Placer County District Attorney. Our office has charged Mr. Lawhead with 1 count of murder and 2 special circumstances, one for murder a rape during the commission of a murder and a kidnap during the commission of that murder, as well as an independent count of kidnapping. Needless to say, this is an incredible case, and I want to first start by commending Sheriff Wu and the men and women of the Sheriff's Office, specifically the cold case team. Justice, just because the passage of time, doesn't mean justice diminishes in importance. This family has suffered in anguish for 35 years, and they deserve some accountability. This was an enormous case that devastated a family and shook a community. I was in high school at the time. I didn't live far away. I remember my parents talking about this case. The entire community talked about this case and the Warner family. And for this day to occur represents that our investigators, our prosecutors, continue to work on these cases. Simply because the passage of time doesn't mean any importance is diminished. We harness new technology, we commit to good old-fashioned police work, and ultimately apprehended someone responsible for this crime. The legal process will unfold. It's still to be determined when we will see Mr. Lawhead here in Placer County, based on the extradition from Arizona. But we look forward to his arrival here so we can commence prosecution and give some measure of justice to the family and to the community. I don't use the word closure because I don't really think there is such a thing, but at least there can be accountability and some finality for the family as they begin to navigate the criminal justice process. So again, I want to thank our partners, the Sheriff's Office, for this incredible arrest, and we look forward to bringing Mr. Lawhead to justice as swiftly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. So moving forward, we already know that under an assumed identity, Mr. Lawhead lived in the state of Washington, Oregon, and Arizona. Obviously, there is a lot of work to be done by our investigators to trace his movements over the last 20 years, also to see if he's been involved in any other crimes since then. So we're urging any other law enforcement agencies to check their cold case DNA against Mr. Lawhead's and to work with our investigators to piece together a timeline on any additional crimes that Mr. Lawhead could potentially be responsible for. And before I close and open up for questions, I really do have to give a lot of thank yous. The Sheriff's Office didn't do this in a vacuum, and we couldn't do it alone. First of all, like I said in the beginning, I couldn't be more proud of the hard work and dedication of the men and women to my right, who really worked tirelessly to bring some sense of justice to the Warner family and hold Mr. Lawhead accountable. My partner, District Attorney Morgan Geyer, and his office for their collaboration and partnership, the Laisha Boyden and the U.S. Marshal's Office for their assistance, our Board of Supervisors and our County Executive's Office. Honestly, we couldn't do what we do without the support, both for Morgan's shop and the Sheriff's Office, financially in our budgets, to provide top-notch law enforcement service and take cases like this and work them tirelessly to make sure we find justice for the victims. The Bullhead City Police Department in Arizona, obviously the Scottsdale Police Department, the Orange County Sheriff's Office, the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in South Carolina, the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab. We couldn't have done any of this without the assistance of all of those agencies. And then I think finally in closing, I have to point out that working cold cases is also a very expensive endeavor. It costs a lot of money going to a lot of these private labs to do this DNA testing. And while the Sheriff's Office, through the support of the county, has invested a lot of money in some of these tests, we had some initial success. And I've spoken about that success out in the community. And it has touched members of this community to stand up a Placer County Cold Case Foundation to raise funds to help investigate these crimes. And it was in fact donations from members of this Placer County community that paid for the testing that actually solved this case. So with that, we will open it up for a short question and answer, but I would ask that understand there's a lot of things unfolding right now, and this is an active investigation that will be prosecuted, so there may be a lot of things that we cannot answer. So with that, is there any questions?
Sheriff, your message today to the Warner family. Obviously, there's no closure and it doesn't bring her back, but what would you say to them more than 30 years after?
You know, nothing can bring back the loss of their loved one or even attempt to overcome the trauma that they've been through over the last 34 years. We hope this is a small step in the healing process for closure and to bring justice to this case, and we're keeping them all in our thoughts and prayers.
Is the family still in the area?
They are not, but they have been kept informed throughout this case, and they're aware of the arrest.
Sheriff, is there any reason to believe that the suspect knew Ms. Warner before this happened, or that they knew each other at all?
No.
And could you tell us when exactly he was identified as a suspect in the case?
We got a DNA match earlier this year. It hasn't been that long.
This question is for both of you, Sheriff and DA Geyer. What would you say within the system failed to allow this guy to be released and then commit this heinous crime? Where did it fail?
I don't want to become overly political. I'll just say that I would say that newspaper article speaks for itself in that I think the justice system here in California is broken. It's probably more broken than it was then, that allowed Mr. Lawhead to get released after only serving 11 years. And we talk about elder parole and all the other things that are going on right now. But I could go on in that conversation for a long time. But honestly, I think today is about Cindy Warner, her family, and her memory. And don't want to become overly political at this time. I'd be more than happy to do some interviews later, as I'm sure the DA would, and talk about our thoughts on elder parole. Thank you.
The other homicide conviction that we had before, is that here in Placer County?
It was in Sacramento County. It was attempted homicide and rape and sodomy of an 11-year-old child. All right. See no other.
One more.
Yes, sir.
How much does it mean to the office to bring a resolution to this case that has been one of the most notorious cold cases in this region for more than a generation?
Yeah, I think this is why you pin the badge on. This is why you take the oath to serve in the first place. You know, we've really made it a top priority since 2023 to put a lot of resources and financial effort into solving some cold cases, and we've done some phenomenal work. There are a couple cases that are probably the most heinous and the most impactful on our community. This is a case that as I go speak in the community, I still get asked about. So to have this